why people beat about the bush, and they are into free market, allowing business to operate freely. And then later they want to regulate so much. They want to put the regulatory authorities so much. They want to make the government so huge and everything. But really what LM has given on competition, on fear for all that is what Africans are fearing, to embrace free market capitalism. But what is the solution? And what is also the solution for those conflicts that you talked about, Mr. Joram? The best solution is that we must embrace free market capitalism. And we must know that free market capitalism is not Western, like how people think about it, but it is actually African. But we are confused by these colonialists to think that free market capitalism was not ours, and ours was communism, socialism, dictatorship, what. But free market capitalism has been ours, and we need to embrace it because it always caused voluntarism, working together, benefiting from each other, everyone sharing a value on the market and everything. So what is the solution for all those problems that you mentioned? The solution is Africans will need to come up and embrace an Afrocentric free marketism, governance system or ideology. Afrocentric free marketism, whereby, for example, like LM was concerned that these people are going to be the dominant people in the economy. No, we can make the free market capitalism Afrocentric in a way that investors or foreign investors will come, whatever they contribute, these people will only earn from the dividends or from the profits or from the outcomes, but they will not own, for example, the assets of the company. Yes, you are an investor, but you are not allowed to own assets. You will only benefit from the dividends. That is one of the solutions that we can do. Yes, it is free market capitalism. Everyone can come and invest. Everyone can export and take the global market, but we must protect our African interests. Because these people, as you know, yes, if it was on a silver plate, that it is fair play for everyone involved, we would leave it. But because, first of all, rooted from colonialism, these people showed us that they are selfish, and also because these people, even up to now, in how they play worldwide inflation, for example, you know, the US dollar, how marketable it is worldwide and how people make it their asset. You remember how those people played inflation during COVID times by printing lots of dollar papers, useless dollar papers, and putting them into the world circulation, and these people played cards and make sure that they are still on top. That superiority complex that they have. If they didn't have that, we would ensure it's a silver plate in Africa. It is a fair play for everyone involved in trade. But because they have that superiority complex in them, then we must put restrictions on them. And that is by making the free market capitalism, making it Afrocentric, stopping them on certain things. For example, like owning assets in company. It's not for foreign investors.
Okay, now, Ken, let us end it there. Ken.
Yes, let me talk about.
Let us end it there. As we conclude in 15 minutes, those who have questions can put them on the chat, and maybe you raise up your hands, and then we conclude. This is the last question we have for our panelists, and we dive into the questions. We see some of the African countries, like Uganda, for example, where we hail from, having a very big government, which actually does not result in creation of wealth or providing solution to the challenges of Africa or Uganda in particular. To compare today, 2 weeks back, one of the gentlemen called Javier Milei, a libertarian, actually gained power in Argentina. His proposal involved reducing the ministries from 21 to 9 ministries. He's deregulating the economy. He's actually selling the cars of government offices and also reducing taxes. I don't know if you have ever heard about him. What do you think his proposal, how important are his proposal? One, reducing the ministries of government. He gave the reason that people can use their money directly more efficiently than the government. If we see in Uganda, we have over 529 MPs in parliament, over 80 ministers. But here we see the gentleman gets power. He's reducing the ministries from 21 to 9, trying to reduce taxes, deregulating the economy. He's actually selling some banks, trying to remove some banks and government institutions, government investments. Richard, in 2 minutes, what is your take on this gentleman? President of Argentina.
Yes, Joram, I'm having network challenges, but what I can assure
you can go on. If the network gets to us, we shall get to another person.
No, I'm saying that what I know about that president is that he has already set the pace of one of the best economies that we are yet to realize. Liberal ideas have always done the greatest job in making sure that people flourish. I do not agree partly with my brother Rodin when he said that, you see, when you have free markets, especially where much of the production is controlled by the whites or the imperialists, that it doesn't make sense if you have nothing to offer. I completely don't agree with that, because you see, yes, I don't agree with that completely, because look, if you have a stable government that believes in free markets, like the way that gentleman is doing in his country, you can rely on repatriation, the little they get out of tax, to create local domestic value that can raise competent local investors. That's what countries have been doing. It's on rare occasions where you find that import substitution goes best and is fit on a leveled scale. No, much of the times we get investors who invest into the economy, and after the government uses the revenue to build competent local investors by creating subsidies for them, sometimes by creating tax cuts for them, and also giving them what we call zoning. It's unfortunate we don't have it in Uganda, but some economies have already built zones. They have what we call local industrial parks, especially if you go to Malaysia, Singapore, Japan. The current Asian tigers have gone to that extent. So what I'm saying with that gentleman is that the ideas he's fronting are going to revamp not only the economy, but also build the regional bloc of trade that he has around the country right now. Argentina has not been bad. It only got a few leaders.
Okay, Richard, we seem to have a network challenge, and I think you'll come later and conclude on that. Let us go to LM.
All right.
LM, yes, LM, should we take on the big governance, or we should make sure the government is more efficient and actually set institutions that work directly with the people and create such infrastructure where people develop, instead of creating big government that actually becomes a burden to our economy? What is your take, LM?
Comrade Joram, I want to thank you for this. I would want to jump onto what Kakande had really started with, and he was talking, though I think you are not the one who was listening well, but he was talking and was not affected by network. It is true, our governments are too big. And the challenge is that most of us growing up in our little families, we realize that most of our parents wanted us to either work in governments or we don't work at all. So basically realize that now the government growing to that enormous stage, or like this kind of nature, it is because of the over demands by the population. The population thinks, the population thinks that having a big economy, having a big government, having people in government will always help them have an access to the national treasuries. You realize that now government, there's now that idea of over districtization in Uganda, where now every now and again they're creating another new district. And to some extent, Museveni gives one argument that that's how we can encourage urbanization. That's why right now that we're having more cities than only Kampala before. So if Turim is thinking that is not creating urbanization, and that's how we can at least encourage those other rural-based districts to at least develop or become urbanized in the names of having liberal kind of markets and developments. But truly speaking, it is very important that such numbers of people in parliament should be reduced, either by, a quarter of these people are the ones who are supposed to be in parliament, or even maybe let me say 100 only, because this number of people, of parliamentarians in government is very hard to manage. I want this scenario. Our government employs over 330 and above 330,000 employees or workers or civil servants, you might call them, from top to bottom. And yet, last time when the president was making his statement about the industrialization process in Uganda, he claims that the formal industries are employing only 1,500 employees, meaning that is just a half of what the government is employing. And you might ask yourself, how is that possible that the government is employing more than the formal industrial sector in the country? Is the question. That is very unsustainable. That means the government will so much depend on taxation, on donations, on foreign aid to control or to manage its expenses. Because government is very expensive. Government has a lot of expenses and it is bad in business. It's true. And that's the problem. Our governments are too big. It is very true. But we have to ask ourselves also, is it about the big governments or it's about unaccountable leaders who are non-transparent, who are corrupt, is the question. Because sometimes, give an example of China, the ratio of the population and the number of leaders or employees in the government is too high than Uganda's, if at all we are to consider in ratio of the civil servants vis-a-vis the population. But realize that China, with its kind of planned economy, it's advancing, it is having lots of money, it's making all those advancements, and it has nothing avoiding it, and it is offering foreign aid and advancements in our continent here. So the question could also be about the leadership, just as Kakande said. But it's not only leadership, it's the political institutions being strong enough to at least uphold some level of transparency, to the extent that even might not alter what is already in position in operation. That's all I can say.
Okay. Kenneth, as you conclude in 2 minutes, the question of a big government, we are certainly sure that the government does not own money. Government has no money. All the money they have belongs to people, to the taxes, and of course from grants and borrowed money. Government does not create jobs. They only create jobs using taxpayers' money. Why do you think the government are becoming too big that?
Yeah, thank you very much.
People seem not to know the problem.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joram. The issue of large government, sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Joram. The issue of large government.
Yes, please.
And I'm very happy that Mr. Elem now, a former socialist, is starting to also analyze that issues of,
I'm not a socialist
capitalism. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, that he's starting also realize that issues of capitalism are becoming more needed or necessary in this era. About the large government, surely it is the reason why corruption is unending in our governance bureaucracies, because by having a large government, everyone thinks first and foremost, the bureaucracy, the making of policies, the flow of orders and everything becomes complex. And in so doing, corruption keeps on increasing. So the best solution is we have to cut our governments in size and also in the roles they are performing. It's not about reducing the size of government and then putting much pressure on the few who will remain to do all that much work. But it's also about even reducing the roles of government. For example, services. Government should not be so much involved in services like education, like healthcare. We should leave this to the private sector. And then also, I see also government getting involved in for example, industrialization and everything. We should, and yet their products cannot compete on the market. I have never seen a government product on market. I hear they are building juice factories and everything, but I've never seen it competitive on the market. I don't know why. So they reinforce them into their functions and everything. So let us cut the size of government, but also cut the what? The roles.
Okay.
And what is contributing to this, a moment, what is contributing to this also is democracy, whereby someone wants to create more districts and then divide, because now this one belongs to the opposition and then this one supports the government. Democracy is not good. We need to, people need to reduce on the hopes that they have in democracy, such that we can have a small government, even if it is there forever, but as long as it is small and manageable. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So if anybody has a question, you can raise the hand, and you have 10 seconds and raise it as we conclude. For our panelists, you have one minute to conclude. If we don't have any question, then we can allow our panelists to conclude in one minute each. Yes, whoever has contributed, thank you very much for that wonderful. I see as if there is a question in the chat. Let me check the chat box. What is the best? I think your panelists can hear this question. What is the base and the superstructure of capitalism, federalism, and imperialism in Africa? The mixture of such a setting in the population has got poor performance in our governance, business, and sociology perspective of the population. And if we do not handle it, if we don't handle its endless discussion, if we don't handle it, it is an endless discussion. I think that's what you wanted to say. I think that is what I see in our chat. So I think there's nobody who has put up the hand. Allow me to invite Ken in less than 1 minute to conclude. Give us your way forward as we conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joram. As I conclude, ladies and listeners, people who will also watch this years later, my name is Behangana Kenneth. I'm an entrepreneur and a philosopher, and on social, and my is Twanir Grandi. Twanir Grandi. My other name is Twanir Grandi. My way forward is that Africans, we need to embrace the Afrocentric free marketism. Rule of law, limited government, free markets, free trade, property rights. Then also civilians, Africans, we need to reduce on our hopes in democracy. Democracy is a Western brought in thing. It was not our thing.
What is the solution? What is
the solution? The way forward for the governance of Africa is embracing the Afrocentric free marketism, whereby we have rule of law, we have limited government, we have free markets, we have free trade. And this is how Africa is going to unite. And it will unite because of us, the young people. The young generation is a growing force that is going to promote Afrocentric free marketism through advocating for free market, free trade, rule of law, patriotism, is very good to protect our culture identity. And then also we must understand that democracy is not the way forward. Otherwise, if we don't stop believing in democracy, we shall keep our leaders will keep in this sugar-coated democracy, like how Museveni and Kagame are doing. We should stop. We should reduce on our hopes in democracy. Thank you so much.
I think Joram, we've lost Joram. I'll make my parting shots. To my case, I think the idea of Afrocentric kind of free market economy doesn't exist. I think that is not being an idealist, not a realist. There's nothing like an African situation, culture, whatever. We are all differentiated. We are all products of different cultures, different thinking, and there's nothing that is really unifying in that perspective. Yeah, truly, we might say that there's need to have that kind of free market economy and all that, but there's nothing as African, because I didn't see Europeans saying that let us now develop a European kind of free market economy. The Americans also doing that, or maybe the Argentinas, or even the Brazilians. So the question becomes very short. How then can this economy develop based on its entrepreneurs? What's the nature of the entrepreneurs in the continent is the question. Because as we do import, give an example of what one time Dangote said, that the more we import into an economy, we create employment levels, or we increase on the employment levels elsewhere, yet we worsen our employment levels inwards. We become consumers, and when we become consumers of what is coming from the external world, we employment levels, or we increase the employment levels elsewhere, yet we are worsening ours here. And sometimes we just become consumers, and yet we're not also producing enough. And in that case, also I would claim that the solution could also be in research. When we talk about research, we can either decide to invest in knowing how we can modernize our machineries, how we can modernize our technology, digital platforms, so that we can compete favorably in this world of globalization. It is true we can't avoid capitalism. I think today I would want to admit that we can't avoid capitalism, but then we ask ourselves, are we going to remain victims of the process, or we are going to become also agents of the change? So at the point where we find ourselves in the process of defining how we are going to determine that, it would be much easier for us to control this economy. And in that same level, I would consider, yes, true. When you talk about governance direction in Africa, governance itself, Comrade Kenneth, is democracy. I hope you knew that before you came into this discussion. When we talk about the governance, we're talking about people's participation, rule of law. We talk about transparency, consent. These are all elements of democracy. So I don't know whether you are considering that act in the process of arguing, but the truth is that, is it about how these procedures of people being part of the whole process, the solution, or we can have an aristocracy kind of democracy that should operate? It is true that not everyone can be part of the solution, because the question of collaboration means that we are not even being right on what we know, what we are supposed to be doing. The issue of saying that unity in progress, those things that don't work. Individually, what are we doing on our own basis to develop our economy? Because sometimes even those who created cars, they didn't have to come as a whole country to say that we are going to develop the Ford. They're not going to develop the Toyota. No, it can start with an idea, and an idea can be pushed by someone else, and that other person might advance it economically and all that. So the question is that I think individually how our entrepreneurs think towards this can solve the problem. And the entrepreneurs are the problem solvers. So if at all we have less entrepreneurs, that becomes a problem. But if at all we empower our entrepreneurs to be focused with how the global economy is operating, it will be much easier for them to favorably compete in this very competitive world. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Elem, for that submission. I'm not saying that we should delete democracy because we are seeing countries like Kenya, they are doing it well, they are democratic. But what I'm saying is that Africans need to reduce on their hopes in democracy. They should not look at democracy as the solution, because people sit down and think that, let me sit when after the regime of Museveni, then that's when I will work. The Tuyamba Lengule things and all that. People should know that democracy is not the way forward. The way forward is the governance systems, how we are governed, the policies and everything and all that. And they should learn to tolerate with the current governments and also partake on the productive work. They need to embrace entrepreneurship. They need to embrace professionalism. They need to embrace cooperation, working together. They need to embrace new ideas and all that. And they need to adapt to the modern changing world, whereby innovation and creativity is taking the lead in technology and everything. But otherwise, about what you are saying on the Afrocentric ideology, that the Europeans did not come up to also put on their own, you should know that formerly Africans were capitalists before the coming of these Western ideas about capitalism. We were capitalists formerly, but now these people, when they took on our ideology or when they took on our way of life, for Africans, they tried to change it so much and bring in even behavioral and cultural activities or cultural behaviors of theirs. For example, like homosexuality, for example, like what, and they also put in them as individual freedoms or individual liberties, and that they're also part of a capitalist state. That is not the way. So that's why I'm like, we must, us as Africans, embrace our formal capitalism. And in this way, to tell the Westerners that we are not part of theirs, so they should not become so much supreme with us, is to mention it or to name it Afrocentric. And when we name it Afrocentric, that means we are going to be independent. And whenever we are trading with them, we shall trade on a common benefit, on mutual benefits, and them believing in African interests, we protect our interests, and they also protect their interests. They also be themselves, but we trade on mutual benefit. But otherwise, this is the way to go. Thank you very much, guys. Africans, we need to wake up. Everyone should become inclusive in all this. If you can't be an entrepreneur, kindly become an investor. Bring up ideas, become a professional, do talent, do everything, and have that sense of belonging to Africa. That is patriotism. Become patriotic. Don't be nationalistic. Don't be a chauvinist like people like Idi Amin. They were too patriotic, and because when you become too patriotic, you'll not be tolerant to other people, to the Westerners, but become a tolerant person, be patriotic, love your country, but also believe in international trade, believe in international cooperation. That is it. Thank you very much. I remain Behangana Kenneth Tuanir Grandi. We must build a united African nation. That is UAN, and that is my name, Tuanir, Tuan, meaning the United African Nation. Thank you, guys. Thank you for embracing, for laying a rock for the future governance of Africa.
Yes, I think I should also give my parting shot. I think by solution, we should first embrace limited government. We cannot talk about development unless we talk about our expenditure. And in this, I mean that we must have the executive as to the only required number of ministers, and to the degree that we must have a parliament which is sensible and reasonable to the numbers. We cannot have 500 MPs and we call that development. By design or by default, we ought to fail. Yes, Ellen gave an example of China. But these are countries that invested so much in education, and they understood why they need those numbers as compared to Uganda. My third point is that we are going to invest so much in education, and that the underlying word is research. For as long as we have an education system where a monkey and an elephant are given one test of climbing a tree, we always ought to fail. Creating the legal regime that supports local investment, especially the manufacturing world, and also making sure that we also start giving these incentives, investment incentives to the local investors, as well as giving them room to copy from those that come from other countries. The Beijing developed mainly because of education. They used to get the best scientists, take them to Apple, to industries, to Microsoft, to Google, just to learn those specific things. And then they come back and they teach the rest. They could borrow and invest in getting ideas. And then when they come back home, they train others to do the same. Much of their fake products used to come to Africa, and then they improve to the extent of competing globally. I think those are one of the ideas that we have to copy. And then the other thing, which is my last point, is the governance question. We cannot put away the idea of leadership, whether it is creating strong political structures or strong structures to support investment or to support free markets or to support research and development or to support academia for anything. But we must, or we can think of, it starts with who is leading that point. So choosing politically market-oriented leaders, liberal leaders, leaders who understand the need for free markets, the need for rule of law and meaningful rule of law, because I can say from the legal perspective that Uganda has one of the best laws, be it on investment, be it on anything, but the implementation of it becomes a problem. You find we have a Ministry of Finance, which has a full code of laws to follow, but then it also has a subsidiary body in the State House, which is responsible for investors, which completely has nothing like the law regulating it, but has political power over the one which has the legal. So I think having the straight leaders who understand free market economy, who have understood the ideas of capitalism, and I'm talking of capitalism which is integrated with integrity. We've always had this debate of the US teaching about pure capitalism, but itself does not practice capitalism. It's pure entirety. We've seen them giving subsidies. They also give tax cuts. They also close borders to some products, even within the European Union. So we are saying, for as long as we marry integrity within the leadership question, then we can have the best for Africa. And lastly, as I wind up, is to go back to the way we see things, perception. We cannot compare Uganda to the US by design or by default. We cannot. Even by the level of investment, we cannot. Even the quality of products that we produce, we cannot still compare. Let us create an African-based solution. Let us create a trade within ourselves, because we have enough population to feed each industry that we produce here in Africa. But the concept of trying to jump on industries that have grown would be a problem, and that is hindering us to go for loans that we cannot pay, and that have become ropes within our necks, which was developed by the IMF or the World Bank. Their policies are good, but they never develop any country. However, they keep it into slavery. So it is my last point of saying, let us change the way we see things. Let us appreciate governance, the direction of giving everyone rights to do whatever they want, what makes them free, what makes them happy, and also to make sure that we support structures that give room for local entrepreneurs, especially on value addition and research. I would like to thank Joram and the organizers of this discussion. We hope to have more of this, and also to have an impact-based solution whenever we on such calls. Thank you. Yes, sorry, I'm seeing Adam saying that free market is democracy best we must accept. I think these are just ideologies. We've had dictatorial regimes practicing free market. It is if you go to Dubai, there's no democracy. Everyone knows that. They don't have democracy, but are they practicing free market? Hasn't it grown to that extent? I think the practical examples that we have are that any kind of best structures, and I think free market is just helping a common man to to trade with ease. That's what I think. You trade with ease. You don't have tariffs on you. You don't have these exorbitant exploitative taxes. You don't have limitations, and you are free to go into regional integration and also trade as free as if you are from national from there. And that's what Dubai is doing. We have products of them in the whole of Asia and even the BRIC now. So I
Kakanda
think
was
it's not.
asking, what is your definition of democracy then?
Democracy is just when it is simply when people choose who they want to govern them. Simple as that.
I think that's the political view, but then also there's an economic view that everybody is part
is.
of the process, everybody can engage in the markets, and that's free market economy. That's what I was saying. So there's the political view of democracy, there's an economic view, the social view.
I don't think it is such of a political view. I think democracy as of today has got a standard definition. We cannot talk about economics and we fail to talk about politics. One mother is the other. Very inseparable.
Yeah, basically, I think that's also a point to consider. But remember, capitalism was built on the idea of pushing for everybody at least saying something, even though they're saying nothing. So an economic base, like meaning that if at all you have a strong economic base, you can determine what others should do or not do. So basically speaking, but yes, it's true that it becomes now more of a myth. I don't think we can really basically say that everybody can be part of the process, determining who should do this and who should not do that. But systematically stating on the realities of the ground, realize that there will still be an elite class that is trying to determine how an economy is operating. So if at all we have an elite consensus on how the operations must be made, how research must be made, how industrialization can be developed, how industrialization can be advanced, I think probably we might really have a very great change in the country itself. Because sincerely speaking, saying that waiting for the whole Africa to develop is really going to be a problem that we can't really accept. Truly that the change starts from somewhere and it ends somewhere. So I think we must admit that we can't pull the whole continent to reason like us. But what we can do is at least have the part of the continent show a reflection of what can be done best for the economy that's always subdued by the external world. I think that's my argument. That's all. Thank you very much.
I think Adam, you forget a point. Whereas you talk about economic development and you cannot pull everyone, some countries don't want to develop. That's their choice. That's what you forget. So if you talk about that there should be an elite class that should determine, no, we don't need an elite class that determines. We might have people who influence, but they shouldn't determine. That's the point. Everyone should be able to, within themselves, determine what satisfies them objectively. That's the point. So because if it was having people to determine, as you are putting it, by now would have been copying Nigeria. It's not also well off. Even if you talk about South Africa, it's not also well off. It has issues.
Kakande, I want to take you back to the Asian tigers. It was really very important to admit that the fact that these countries had to develop very fast during that period of time, there was a very strategic elite class that had to determine how the economy was supposed to change, how the economy was supposed to operate.
That is wrong.
Truly speaking, saying that
no.
Yes.
No. If you look at one of the people who existed by that time and were part of how the strategy was to make sure these Asian tigers grow. I don't know if you read the book of Alice Amsden, The Rise of the Rest. It calls those countries the rest, that they grew after the superpowers. the structures they laid were simply to first appreciate an individual in his entirety. And then the other point was to make sure that these people have laws that protect